This was the scene 40 minutes ago as Irishman Derek Daly tried to take advantage of what might be his last chance to qualify for this year's Indianapolis 500. The 33-car field already full. In order to bump Jeff Brabham out, Daly would have had to travel 4 laps at an average speed over 207 miles per hour. But the first lap was slow. Rain began to fall. And as a worried wife, Beth Daly looked on. The yellow light came on, killing for the moment Daly's chances to qualify into the field. So, with less than an hour of qualifying time to go and rain falling in Indianapolis, the final hour begins. ABC Sports presents live from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Indianapolis 500 time trial. The final hour. This ABC Sports exclusive is being brought to you by Miller Beer. Miller, made the American way since 1855. By Chevrolet, who invite you to drive today's Chevy, live today's Chevy. By Goodyear, you either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. And by Citizen, no other watch expresses time so beautifully. This has been a day of almost constant rain in Indianapolis. Only for an hour or so was the track open for qualifying. There you see the weather conditions at this moment, and as 90% humidity would indicate, it is raining right now. So here, for the moment, is the field which will apparently start in next Sunday's Indianapolis 500. From the first weekend of qualifying, pole sitter Rick Mears, his Penske car teammate, and defending champion Danny Sullivan, Michael Andretti, those three in the front row. Second row, Bobby Rahal, Mario Andretti, Al Unser Sr., the third Penske-prepared car. Kevin Cogan, Tom Sneva, and Colombian Roberto Guerrero in row 3. In row 4, Al Unser Jr., Ed Tim, and two-time Formula One world champ Emerson Fittipaldi. Johnny Rutherford, a three-time winner, rookie Randy Lanier, Pancho Carter, last year's pole sitter in row 5. Row 6, Roberto Moreno, Jacques Villeneuve, both of them rookies, Danny Ungaya. In row 7, Jose Legarza, Tony Bettenhausen, and last year's Rookie of the Year, Ari Lyondike. In row 8, Dennis Firestone, Jeff Brabham, at the moment the slowest car in the field, A.J. Foyt, fastest on the second day of qualifying. In row 9, Raul Bozel of Brazil, Scott Brayton, and Phil Kruger, another rookie. Row 10, Chip Ganassi, Jim Crawford, a Scotsman, and Rich Vogler. And in row 11, including the last two cars, which both have qualified today, Johnny Parsons, veteran Gary Bettenhausen, and longtime A.J. Foyt associate George Snyder. There is the scene as you look at the Speedway, where next Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Pacific, ABC Sports will bring you for the first time live, wire-to-wire coverage of the Indianapolis 500. And the slowest qualifiers to this moment, those cars which will have something to worry about if indeed there is to be more qualifying on what is at this moment a wet track today. Jeff Brabham, the man on the bubble. Those are the cars which have qualified or are presented for qualification and still have a chance to make a run today if indeed the track is opened again. Hello again, I'm Tim Lampley along with Sam Posey. Sam, with the rain falling, it now appears that there may not be any more qualifying for the race in this final hour. Are there any cars which, in your view, have been unfairly cheated out of a chance to qualify by the weather?
Oh, no, not at all. There were 5 or 6 cars in line that would like to have had a shot at it, but our information is none of them really had an honest chance to get in. And you know, the track has been open for qualifying up until today, 3 days of good weather, so anyone who came here had his chance.
Would you say it's the highest quality field ever?
Well, if you judge by the speed, certainly. The average speed of the field is 210.358 miles an hour. And as you pointed out, just 2 years ago, 210 miles an hour was a new track record here set by Tom Sneva. Now it's the field average. And what I think is remarkable, not only the speed, but the small spread between the fastest cars at 216 and the slowest cars less than 7 miles an hour slower. So it's a very tight field and, of course, a very fast one.
We have a lot of information coming up for you within the next 45 minutes, regardless of whether there is any more action on the track. When we come back from commercial, we'll be talking to a frustrated Derek Daly, an elated A.J. Foyt, and live, last year's champion, Danny Sullivan.
I knew you didn't need.
Indianapolis 500 front row of Johnny Rutherford, Mario Andretti, and Bobby Unser is the only one in Speedway history comprised entirely of former pole position qualifiers and former winners.
We're back at Indianapolis Motor Speedway where rain continues, and rain of a sorts has fallen on Derek Daly on my right, but not on A.J. Foyt. A.J., you put another car into the field today, George Snyder. You were first in line. You gambled. You put him in the field, but now it's raining on you with your third car, the Chevrolet that you really wanted to get into the field today.
That's quite true. George went out this morning. He ran close to 210 miles an hour. I was very happy with it, and it was last in line. The other car was first in line. We had to make a decision, so I said, George, we got to at least take a chance. It looks like it's going to rain, so he ran it a little over 209, and we put Mike Nish back in the other car, which he ran over 211 with it the other day, and it's performing good, but it looks like the rain's got us.
What about the Indianapolis 500? You're back at the end of the field because of a technicality. You couldn't qualify on the first day because you couldn't meet the deflection of the side pods by what? The size of a fingernail, about 20 thousandths?
It was 25 thousandths, and it's just one of them calls, you know, it was wrong, I guess, and took about 2 seconds to fix, but they said you can't touch it in line, so I had to go back to the back of the field.
Well, now what about you? How do you feel about the race? Can you make it another Indy 500?
I'm not here to run second.
Well, that's the story on A.J. Foyt. Derek Daly will be sitting on the sidelines, it looks like, for this year's Indianapolis 500. You were right in the middle of your run, and you say you were probably had enough speed, if the rains had held up, to make the field.
We had speeds of 208 plus this morning. We felt comfortable that we could run fast enough to get in the race, but the weather caught us out.
Well, it's going to be a long month of May, and it rains on Derek Daly. It shines on A.J. Foyt. What about it, Jim?
Well, Jack, that's the way it goes here. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Here's a man who's up with one of the 2 fastest cars in the race and a spot on the front row. We'll be back to talk to him right after this. Back live now in Indianapolis, where 1985 Indy 500 champion Danny Sullivan is gracious enough to join us. We had also invited Danny's Roger Penske teammate Rick Mears, but Rick has a touch of the flu and so is sitting back in the motel today. Danny, one observation I think we can make with some certainty is that a lot more people know who you are this year than at this time a year ago. How, in your own mind, is your preparation for this race and your confidence going into it different from last year?
Well, there's a lot more media attention and a lot more demand on my time here, but being with Penske, we were trying to just keep everything as it was last year, concentrate on the car, and just try to focus on the race win. But confidence-wise, I feel good. I had another year with a Penske team. We've done a lot more races. Of course, last year was only my second race with the Penske team, so I'm feeling a lot more comfortable, and of course, I think the speed shows it this month.
With his car, he should be comfortable, Sam.
Yes, exactly, and you're established as a favorite in so many people's minds, Danny, but as you look ahead to the race, you know that to be a favorite on paper is one thing. It's another to have to drive the car. What are some of the problems that you might face?
Well, I think the biggest fear for all of us, of course, is getting involved in somebody else's accident or some silly little thing going wrong. Rick Mears, for example, last year, the screw came out of his helmet that holds his visor on, and he had to make 2 pit stops to fix it. Something silly like that, some little 10-cent part. You know, an engine is okay, but the little things are what we worry about.
Well, listen, whatever lies ahead in the race, of course, you and Rick went incredibly fast in qualifying. And just to get an idea visually how fast Rick's speed and his time was compared to what was the slowest time in the race as of this morning, Dick Simons, we composed this small piece which compares those 2 runs. Now, first of all, what we see is the end of Rick's record qualifying speed run at almost 217 miles an hour. Shortly after that, there's Dick Simons, almost 12 miles an hour slower at just under 205. Now, here they are, frozen in the middle of the first turn. Dick Simons' car is already not handling well on the right. He's down over the line, where Rick Mears' car is free and running well. Here he comes into turn 3, Danny.
Yes, you can see him. He enters very high here. See, the tires are all the same. He's very neutral. He's up fairly high. The car is what we call free, meaning there's no bind to it or anything. He's still, of course, got the throttle down. He's right on the track where he wants. And now you can see the back end is just a little bit looser here. And you see the black mark will start to come off of the right rear tire. And it's just as free and as loose as he wants it. Of course, it takes a nice high line, and he's just there exiting turn 3. Perfect line.
Whereas by contrast, here comes Dick Simon into the same turn 3, entering it slower because his straightaway speeds were slower, less power in the engine. Now notice how quickly he cocks the car down into the turn. Already he is scrubbing off speed that Rick Mears did not scrub off. Now he's over the painted line, which makes the car less stable than it should be. As you can see, he is now scrubbing even more speed as he gets back out toward the edge of the wall. So he has low exit speed, low speed through what is called the short chute as he approaches turn 4. You see, again, he has to dive down below the optimum black groove that you see there on the track, and now he's really fighting for control. As you'll see, he almost hits the wall on the exit. So Dick Simon, despite a great effort, winds up very much short of the speed of Rick Mears. In fact, you see at the end of Dick Simon right there, there is Rick Mears completing his lap at that point. That much further ahead, about 3 seconds.
Well, one thing we can say with certainty, gentlemen, that was qualifying, which may now be over if the rain continues to fall, and the race with 33 cars on the track is an entirely different proposition. Danny, thank you very much for coming with us.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, when we come back, we will have a live interview with one of the father-son teams, Mario and Michael Andretti.
Come the cars, and they're racing in Indianapolis.
Well, I think winning the Indianapolis 500 has meant all of my career.
Side by side, Sullivan has the lead. Standing Sullivan. And just at that moment, losing control of the car.
One of those goals that we really shoot for, and I think by winning Indianapolis, it's more than any other race. It's really like carrying a title.
The Indianapolis 500 live for the first time on network television next Sunday morning.
I'm Al Troutwig in front of the Newman Haas garage in the new gasoline alley, which of course houses the backup car right now of Mario Andretti. And with us is his son Michael Andretti. Michael will chat with you in a moment. Mario, first of all, thanks for waiting around in the rain to talk with us today. You unfortunately were the big story this week in Indianapolis. We're going to roll a tape of your crash on Wednesday. What do you remember as far as what happened with the car?
Well, just I remember everything, but I remember a very big surprise just as I entered turn 3, where something snapped on the right rear and the car just went into a spin, and it was sort of a half spin and then head on into the wall. It was very painful, actually.
As far as that crash is concerned, you said it was the worst head-on crash you've ever had into a wall before.
Oh, yes, and I hope it's the last one, too.
All right, so now what has happened is the car has been taken to England, where it's being attempted to be fixed by the Lola company that manufactured it. In the meantime, you've got your backup car here trying to get it up to snuff, but the unfortunate thing is if the car from England is not fixed, you would have to start the backup in last place. Not a very happy proposition.
No, if I have to start last, it's something I certainly don't look forward to, but it's something that we're just going to have to deal with. Looking at the field, the speed of the field, all the way down to the 11th row is just incredible this year. So the passing from there is just going to be tough, no question. I mean, that could be the understatement.
Any word from England?
Well, we won't know exactly until Tuesday because they have to twist the chassis before they would venture releasing it, and we just don't know yet.
Okay, thank you very much, Mario. And now over to Michael. Michael, when you first heard about your father's crash, what happened to you? What did you feel?
Well, it was a very tense moment. I was going to sign a fan's autograph, and he said that my dad's all right. And I didn't know what he was talking about because I didn't hear the accident. So I got very weak knees at that point, and I had to quick run and find out what happened. And, you know, you just hate those feelings.
What's the difference now that you won't be seeing your father possibly in your rearview mirror when you're in the front row?
Well, I won't have him there pressuring me, but I have a feeling that give him a few laps and he'll be right up behind me. So it's going to be tough. You know, I got a couple others that I have to worry about also.
Okay, thanks to you both. Back to you, Jim Lampley.
All right, thank you very much, Al Troutwig, and thanks, of course, again to the Andrettis. Perhaps no other American sport has such an extended and dramatic build-up as this one. We'll take a look back at it when we come back. We are back. back live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where, as you can see, the only activity on the track remains the circuits of trucks which are trying to dry out the speedway with their tires. We are told now that with a little more than 24 minutes, well, make it 23 minutes and 42 seconds remaining before the close of qualifying, it remains unlikely that the speedway will be reopened for any qualifying attempts. The race you'll see next Sunday is the culmination of 3 full weeks of hard work for the racing teams here at the Speedway. Here is a look back at the most important events to have taken place so far, focusing on last weekend's first 2 qualifying sessions. The first weekend of qualifying was accompanied by hot weather and the customary large crowd. There were surprises, but they were small. The first big name to reach the track, 46-year-old Mario Andretti, champion 17 years ago, second to Danny Sullivan last May. Andretti had practiced at over 216 miles per hour in his Cosworth-powered Lola, but the track had changed, and when his 4-lap speed of 212 plus was posted, Mario was quite aware that it wouldn't hold the pole. Poetically, it was Sullivan in the red March chassis who first knocked Andretti's Lola down a notch. The lesson of 1 week's practice was that owner Roger Penske's 3 cars were again a step ahead, and the defending champion's 4 laps did nothing to dispel that notion. Danny's first 2 circuits broke the single-lap speedway record, and his aggregate speed of 2:15 and change made him look to many like the pole sitter. But when he brought number 1 back to the pits, Sullivan issued a prophetic observation.
I've got to look at my biggest threat being Rick Mears, and I just hope that last lap didn't cost me a little bit. I got a little out of shape down in 3 and had to breathe it a little bit, and that brought the average down.
57 minutes later, we saw just how right he could be. Sullivan's Penske Racing teammate Rick Mears rolled onto the track at the hottest and least advantageous time of the day and proceeded to wipe out all records for qualifying in this form of racing. By the time the Mears March Cosworth completed 10 miles, the 1986 Indianapolis 500 had both a pole sitter and an obvious favorite, and 2-time winner Mears was on the left side of the front row for the 3rd time in 9 years. As Sullivan and Penske looked on, Mears' average speed reached nearly 217 miles per hour. The front row would be completed shortly thereafter, though it couldn't be known at the time. With his early season victory at Long Beach, 23-year-old Michael Andretti had proven he was ready to threaten his father for present-day family supremacy. Now he calmly drove his March to an average speed of 214.5 and knocked the other Andretti's Lola into the 2nd row.
Any feelings about bumping your dad off the front row and taking his place on the outside, at least at this point in time?
Oh, it's about time. He's been doing it to me, so it's my turn.
Minutes later, Bobby Rahal, a front row starter the year before, was ready to take another shot at a lightning time. Rahal's practice laps had been dazzling, and his 213.5 run here placed him in the 4th spot, knocking Mario over into the middle of the track. Most of the other stars of the sport soon joined in. Al Unser Jr. had struggled in practice, but 4 laps at 211 plus ensured that he would make the show. Unser Jr. wound up on the inside of row 4. 1983 champion Tom Sneva had won the pole and been the first man over 200 miles per hour 9 years ago. Now he was near 212, but would find himself in the middle of row 3. Danny Ungaius had the kind of Buick engine that had put cars in 1st and 2nd positions in 1985, but his laps slowed from 211 plus to under 207. He wound up on the outside of row 6. 2-time Formula One world champion Emerson Fittipaldi had led for 11 laps last year. After running over 210 on his qualifying mission, he'll have a chance to get there again from the outside of row 4. Like Ungaius' car, the Brazilian star's March Cosworth slowed considerably on laps 3 and 4 of the qualifying run. At the end of the day, the 3rd of Roger Penske's 3 racers moved onto the asphalt, a one-of-a-kind car never seen before in official action here. 3-time champion Al Unser Sr. is driving a Penske-designed PC-15 chassis powered by a specially built Chevrolet V8 engine, and he upheld his generation's honor by putting it on the outside of row 2. But another of the older set wasn't allowed to qualify on Saturday, and as a result, the field lost a touch of glamour. 51-year-old A.J. Foyt is the race's only 4-time winner, but officials proved that no man is above the rules when when they found in tech inspection that Foyt's car was 25 thousandths of an inch too close to the ground. His Sunday run at 2:13 plus put him outside on row 8. Had he been allowed to do it on Saturday, he'd be in the middle of row 2. Given the speeds at which cars are traveling, it's been a relatively safe month. But there have been 2 significant accidents. In the first week of practice, journeyman driver Herm Johnson hit the wall between turns 1 and 2. He suffered severe fractures in both feet and broke his back, too. It will be some time before Herm Johnson will again drive a race car. Luckier, but just as helpless to control his fate, was Mario Andretti on Wednesday of this past week, when he felt his right rear suspension go lame on the backstretch and spun into the turn 3 wall at upwards of 180 miles per hour. Remarkably, Andretti's injuries were relatively minor, but considerable doubt now remains as to whether his number 2 car can be mended in time for Mario to hold the middle position in row 2. If he changes cars and moves to the back of the pack, he'll be trying to overtake a field which is, as usual, the fastest in Speedway history.
Roger Penske has had at least one car on the front row for every Indianapolis 500 since 1971, with the exception of the 1975 and 1985 races. This year, Penske is represented on the front row by Rick Mears and Danny Sullivan.
This is Larry Nuber in the new contemporary-styled gasoline alley here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And the fact that this suit, even though it's not 6 o'clock yet, is no longer on this man, Jeff Brabham, is an indication that I guess you think you've made it.
Well, I think so. It was a struggle that last half hour. When I was sitting there and watching the rain come in, I just knew that, Derek was going to get out and do his time, and then it was going to rain on me. But things turned out, things turned out okay.
The rain really did help you. It was a blessing, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and we had the car running a lot better this morning, so we would have had a chance to get back in the race. So, if we got bumped out, we were just hoping that the rain was going to at least hold off for our turn.
I think what really adds to the drama of this situation for Jeff is that this is a position that you never in your wildest imagination ever expected to be in. You are one of the acknowledged top 10 in this type of racing.
Well, yes, but I think everybody has problems every now and again, and, I qualified on the first 3 rows the last 2 years, and I haven't finished the race. So, we've got the Valvoline Spirit down a little bit further back in the grid, but I think it's going to be a lot closer to the front on race day.
What about race day? Any special plans because of starting so far back?
No, I've started back here before. I think in '83, I started a bit further back, and I was running second by halfway through the race. And if the car's working well, you just have to go flat out and hope you don't get lapped in the first half of the race.
Well, Jim, car owner Rick Gallis must have some system for getting attention. This is the same car and paint scheme that sat on the pole last year at Indianapolis.
Times have changed, but Brabham does appear for now to have made his place in the show. We are live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There are less than 15 minutes left before the official end of qualifying, and we'll be back.
There's no time ever to relax for 500 miles.
You can't stop concentrating for more than 1 second.
You feel like someone's been beating you around the head with a rubber hose for a month.
Live for the first time on network television, the Indianapolis 500 next Sunday.
Again, we are live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. One question which most of us can only ask and never answer is this: what is it that drives men to keep doing this? Why keep coming back to take the irrational plunge of hurtling around a relatively flat oval track in a tiny open capsule at more than 200 miles per hour? ABC's Dick Schaap approached some of the storied figures in the history of this race to ask them about the magical and enduring appeal of the Indianapolis 500.
Of all the excruciatingly difficult things a driver must do at Indianapolis, one of the most difficult is to quit, to give up a sport that becomes a passion.
It's very hard to quit. It seems to be your life. You get wrapped up in it, and it seems like nothing else seems to count.
Louis Meyer quit 47 years ago. He was the first man to win the 500 3 times, but in 1939...
I had forgot about an oil slick that was on the track, and I lost the machine, and that's all she wrote. I was into the wall. When I was thrown out of the car and looked down into the turn, saw them cars coming, and I got off the track in a big hurry, and I made the decision right then that that was it.
Bobby Unser was the last man to win the 500 3 times. His third victory in '81 triggered protests and controversy, which led to an ulcer and a decision he reached not on the track, but in his home. After a long sleepless night, he turned to his wife.
And I says, guess what? And she's what? And I says, I just quit driving the Indianapolis cars.
Salt Walther did not decide to quit, not even after his car at the start of the '73 race burst into flames. Trapped, Walther was so badly burned, he endured more than 100 operations and the nightmare of kicking morphine addiction. Yet he raced again at Indianapolis the following year, and for 5 more years. Then he quit only because he couldn't get a competitive car to drive. Haunted by his crash, he keeps the charred wreck in his dining room.
At times, I still wake up, sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning, or, you know, and I'll relive it, and I guess it's just something that's going to be with me forever. I never ever thought that I'd get hurt as bad as I was. And I realized it could happen again. But I'm still single, and so I don't have to worry about my wife or my kids. The challenge to me is Indianapolis, and I want to go back.
Walther really does. At 38, he wants to stop selling fancy cars at his father's shop in Ohio. He wants to quit his racing retirement. Give him a sponsor, and he'll drive. At 81, Louis Meyer still enjoys driving, preferably a tractor on his Indiana farm, or even better, a golf ball. At 52, Bobby Unser enjoys polishing up the car in which he won his third 500 and polishing the skills of his teenage son, Robbie, the 10th racing Unser in 3 generations in New Mexico and potentially one of the best. Still, Unser and Meyer understand how difficult it is for Walther to stay quit.
That first race when they take off at Indianapolis that you miss, tears come in your eyes. Just get a kind of a chill when they fire the engines up, and you want to be in there so bad, but then you know it's not for you anymore.
It's sad, and believe me, boy, the first day I show up the track, I got goosebumps all over my body.
Unser crashed in his first 2 500s. In his second in '64, he was in this crash that killed 2 drivers. Unser wasn't hurt. He survived dangerous days of racing.
He had less than a 50% chance of surviving. I'm talking about living. Don't worry about being hurt. And so for me to have told you back then that I would be sitting here now talking to you after winning 3 500-mile races and setting all the records and winning all the other races, I'd have told you no. I wouldn't have expected to go that far.
Was it worth all the risks?
Oh, you darn right it was. I guarantee you that if I could do it again tomorrow, if they'd invent a machine that would turn me back some years, get me back to about 30 years of age, boy, I'd kick rear ends and take numbers. That's all I'd do. It'd just be more fun than I could ever stand.
And would Louis Meyer like one more race around the Brickyard?
Did you ever see a jackass in the Kentucky Derby?
We are back live again. The field for this year's Indianapolis 500. Rick Mears on the pole has won the race twice. Danny Sullivan won it last year. With any luck, Michael Andretti will win it sometime. Row 2, Bobby Rahal. Mario Andretti won only in '69. Al Unser Sr. has won it 3 times. Row 3, Kevin Cogan. Tom Sneva won it in 1983. Roberto Guerrero has been 2nd and 3rd. Row 4, Al Unser Jr., Ed Pym, Emerson Fittipaldi. Row 5, Johnny Rutherford has won the race 3 times. Randy Lanier is a rookie. Pancho Carter completes it. Row 6, Roberto Moreno, Jacques Villeneuve, Danny Ungaius. Row 7, Jose Lagarza, Tony Bettenhausen, Ari Lyondike. Row 8, Dennis Firestone, Jeff Brabham. A.J. Foyt is the race's only 4-time champion. Row 9, Raul Bozell, Scott Brayton, Phil Kruger. Row 10, Chip Ganassi, Jim Crawford, and Rich Vogler. And row 11, Johnny Parsons is the son of a former champion. Gary Bettenhausen and George Snyder are both polished veterans of the sport. Again, a look at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where it now appears to be a dead certainty that there will be no more qualifying attempts, and the field is final. ABC Sports will be bringing you live coverage next Sunday, really a milestone in American sport. There is no other American sports event of this eminence and stature which has never before been nationally televised live. You will be a part of it at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central, and 8 o'clock Pacific Time next Sunday, May 25. Sam Posey, time now for you to handicap the race. Who do you like?
Well, you know, Jim, I spend very little time out here really thinking about who's going to win the race, chiefly because in the years that I've been here, I've learned that it is so truly unpredictable that it's hardly worth the time. For one thing, you're handicapping a combination of car and driver. and half the cars break down in the race, and as Danny Sullivan said when he was here, other things can happen, like your visors coming loose. However, this year it does seem unusual in all the last few years. Heavy favorites exist, Rick Mears and Danny Sullivan. They run for the Roger Penske organization, so their reliability is probably ahead of the rest of the field. They demonstrated in qualifying that they're the fastest cars in the race. And another thing that I think is important, each man badly wants to beat the other one. All right, now, consider the case of two very interesting men who are really a handicapper's nightmare. Mario Andretti and Al Unser Sr. Now, Mario, we're not even sure whether he'll have to start at the back, but let's say he does, and I think he will have to start at the back. Can he make his way through the pack unscathed to the front? And when he gets to the front, will he be able to run with the leaders? Big question marks. Al Unser Sr. His car is both his strength and his weakness. It's completely untried. If it works, he could be a huge factor.
How about a long shot? You'll look good if he does well.
Jim Crawford with his Buick engine will probably break down, but if it doesn't, he could be terrific.
All right, we will take a look right now at the fastest and favored car, number 4, the yellow automobile, which Rick Mears will drive on race day, and you will see it at the pole at 11 o'clock Eastern Time next Sunday when we bring you, once again, our live ABC Sports coverage of the 1986 Indianapolis 500. This ABC Sports exclusive has been brought to you by Miller Beer. Miller made the American way since 1855. By Chevrolet, who invite you to drive today's Chevy, live today's Chevy. By Goodyear, you either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. And by Radio Shack, the computer expert. Stay tuned next for the Disney Sunday night movie over most of these ABC stations except